The snow had been drifting down since mid-afternoon, and by the time the black SUVs and town cars lined up along Michigan Avenue, Chicago had softened into a white hush. Inside the private elevator climbing through the core of the Lakeshore Tower, Elena Marshall watched her reflection in the mirrored doors and made no adjustments. There was nothing to fix. Her charcoal cashmere dress was impeccable. Her posture was straight. Her face remained calm, revealing exactly nothing. The Lakeshore's 52nd floor was the only venue in the city capable of hosting the Whitaker Winter Benefit without anyone feeling squeezed, which was probably why Richard Whitaker had reserved it every December for the past 12 years. Tonight, the room held about 220 people: hedge fund partners, aerospace executives, two congressmen, the editor of a national daily, and enough old money to quietly buy a small Midwestern town. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Champagne flutes caught the glow from the massive crystal chandelier overhead, sparkling like icicles suspended in mid-fall. Elena accepted a glass she had no intention of drinking and drifted toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. 50 stories below, Millennium Park vanished beneath the snow. She preferred the view like this: city lights blurred, everything simplified into quiet geometry. Up here, it was easier to think. Easier to be the version of herself she'd spent a decade carefully constructing. Elena Marshall, 35, CEO of Marshall Aerospace Systems, occasionally referred to in certain boardrooms as the Frost Queen of the Loop. The nickname had begun as a jab. She'd worn it down to a badge through sheer indifference. She hadn't come tonight to socialize. She'd come because her company held roughly 7% of the domestic drone navigation market, and Richard Whitaker wanted to talk merger terms. She would listen, commit to nothing, and exit before the dancing started. That was the plan. The plan was always the same. Her chief strategy officer, Ryan Keller, appeared at her elbow with the practiced timing of someone who'd spent 7 years learning her cadence. "Brennan's circling," he murmured. "He's got a revised non-compete he wants to walk you through. Tell him I'll find him after the plated dinner. He's been polishing that pitch for 10 days. Let him deliver it." Ryan nodded and melted back into the crowd. Elena returned to the window. The snow thickened, turning streetlights into soft halos. She was thinking about the non-competes, hidden triggers, about the red flags her legal team had circled in Section 11, about the 6:30 a.m. call tomorrow. When the sound came, a champagne flute shattering against marble. The high, clean cracks sliced through the quartet, the murmured deal-making, the polite clink of silverware. Silence rushed in afterward, the way it does after a starter pistol. Everyone turned. She stood near the edge of the pastry display, small enough that several guests hadn't noticed her at first. 8 years old, maybe 9. Dark hair in a simple ponytail secured with a plain elastic. Her navy coat was clearly a hand-me-down. The sleeves swallowed her hands, the hem brushed her shins, and melting snow left tiny wet footprints on the polished floor. In her arms, she cradled a brown paper grocery bag decorated with marker-drawn snowflakes. Blue, silver, a little lopsided, the work of someone still learning that art isn't supposed to be perfect. Elena didn't move. The room adjusted around her, heads turning, low voices rising, a slow gravitational tug toward the unexpected. 2 Lakeshore security officers were already threading through the crowd, not rushing, but moving with calm purpose. The girl wasn't crying. That registered first. She scanned the room with focused determination, like someone ticking items off a mental list. Her gaze slid past the congressman, past the wealth managers, past the chandelier, and stopped. Stopped on Elena. It felt physical, that direct, unfiltered attention. Not the curated regard Elena was used to at events like this, but the plain, unguarded stare of a child who had no idea what Elena represented and therefore saw her clearly. One of the security men was now 10 feet away. Elena set her untouched flute on a nearby high top and spoke clearly enough to carry across the hush. "Give her a second." The officer glanced at her. Elena met his eyes. He paused. She crossed the floor herself. The crowd parted. It always did. She stopped in front of the girl and crouched so they were eye to eye. Up close, Elena saw the coat's left sleeve had been mended with careful, slightly mismatched stitches. Someone had taken time with it. "Are you lost?" Elena asked. The girl shook her head. "No, I came to find you." She glanced at the surrounding suits and added, with a seriousness that seemed too large for her frame, "It's important. The elevator chimed. Elena straightened. The doors slid open and a man stepped out, scanning the room with the quick urgency of someone who'd been hurrying but was trying to appear calm. Mid-40s, dark hair streaked with early gray, the kind of face that looked like it belonged outdoors more than in boardrooms. His charcoal suit was well cut, but not bespoke. Solid fabric, honest tailoring. His shoes were polished by hand. She could see the faint, uneven sheen at the toes. His eyes found the girl instantly. He crossed the floor with open hands. Not defensive, not overly apologetic, just moving toward his child. He placed both palms gently on her shoulders from behind. The girl leaned back into him a fraction, a small, instinctive relaxation. He looked at Elena, then at the silent room, then back at Elena. "She's with me," he said, calm, factual, as though stating the obvious should resolve everything. "I can see that," Elena replied. "Your name?" "Jack Sullivan. I own Sullivan's Garage over on Belmont in Lakeview." The girl, still unnamed, glanced up at him. "She wanted to tell you something," Jack continued. "I was circling for parking. She slipped out. I'm sorry for the scene." "There's no scene," Elena said, though the room had only just begun to thaw into quiet conversation again. The security officers had stepped back. "What did she want to tell me?" Jack looked down. The girl looked up. A brief silent exchange passed between them. Then she turned to Elena and held out the grocery bag with its marker snowflakes. Inside was a handmade card in a small clay ornament, a five-pointed star about 5 inches across, painted in metallic gold and deep green, edges slightly uneven from small fingers shaping the clay. The card was folded construction paper. On the front, in neat block printing, "For Ms. Marshall." Inside, in careful kid handwriting, "Thank you for fixing our school library. You made everything better. Love, Ava Sullivan, age 8, Chopin Elementary, Chicago." Elena read it twice. 3 months ago, Ava said, voice steady. The ceiling in the library was dripping whenever it rained. The books were getting ruined and the Wi-Fi router kept shorting out. Ms. Rivera said we might have to shut the whole room down. But then someone gave money and now the roof doesn't leak. We have 20 new laptops and there are cozy reading chairs. Elena remembered approving the grant. The Marshall Family Foundation distributed about $10 million a year in education support across the Midwest. Her director of philanthropy, a meticulous woman named Lauren Pierce, vetted every request and prepared concise summaries. Elena signed where directed. She had never pictured Ava Sullivan. "We had an assembly," Ava went on. "The principal said we should thank the people who helped. Most kids sent emails. I wanted to say it face to face. It feels more real." Elena lifted the clay star carefully. It was heavier than it appeared. Handmade things always are. "I'm glad the library stayed open," she said. "I'm going to be a librarian when I grow up," Ava announced. "Or maybe an engineer. I like fixing things and I like stories. Both are important." Elena glanced at Jack Sullivan. He watched his daughter with an expression too layered for simple pride, something closer to quiet awe at what she carried inside her. "Mr. Sullivan," Elena said, "may I ask how you got past the lobby desk?" A flicker of something like amusement crossed his face. Ava told the concierge she had a personal delivery for Elena Marshall from Chopin Elementary, which was technically accurate. The woman hesitated. Ava said please in a certain way. "I've noticed," Elena said dryly. She glanced at his hands. Clean nails, but faint grease shadows lingered in the creases of his knuckles. Brake dust probably, or motor oil that never quite washes out. "You drove here from Lakeview in this weather," she said. Ava planned it for 7 weeks. She researched the building, compared CTAs versus driving, decided driving was safer for the star. She didn't want it to break on the train. She even mapped the route. 7 weeks, Elena repeated. "She's thorough," Jack said. "Takes after her mom that way." The sentence landed with a slight pause, a practiced steadiness Elena recognized. She didn't press. "You weren't going to stop her," Elena observed. She wanted to thank someone who did something that mattered to her. "I wasn't going to teach her that was wrong." Elena thought of her own childhood. A third-floor walk-up in Pilsen, her mother pulling graveyard shifts at the hospital, the overcrowded public school where the heat sometimes failed, and she'd sat through algebra in her coat. The shop teacher, Mr. Delgado, who stayed late twice a week because she'd asked how engines worked, and he'd said sure. Why not? She hadn't thought of Mr. Delgado in 15 years. Had worked hard to leave Pilsen behind, to build distance as a deliberate asset. Standing on the 52nd floor beside a mechanic whose hands still carried traces of the job, she felt that distance sharply. "Will you stay for dinner?" she asked. The silence that followed was brief and absolute. Ryan Keller froze near the bar. Richard Whittaker paused mid-sentence across the room. A senator's aide glanced over. Jack looked at Elena, then at Ava, who gazed up at him with open hope. "We don't want to impose," he said. "You're not imposing. I'm inviting you." Elena led them to a nearby table, one of the extras always held for unexpected guests, and pulled out a chair. "Ava, do you like chicken or pasta? They do a good rigatoni here." "Pasta," Ava decided, climbing up with the gravity of someone accepting an official role. "What kind?" Elena signaled a server, who returned quickly, rigatoni with vodka sauce and fresh basil. "I don't know what rigatoni is," Ava admitted. "Thick tubes like big macaroni." Ava considered. "Okay." She tucked the grocery bag safely under her chair. Jack sat across from Elena. He held himself with easy awareness of the room but refused to shrink in it. "Tell me about Sullivan's garage," she said. He looked mildly surprised, as if he'd braced for a different line of questioning. "Started it 9 years ago. Mostly American makes, Chevys, Fords, some Jeeps. I handle 30 to 40 jobs a week in peak season. 3 full-time guys, 1 part-timer. Chicago people need their cars. Doesn't matter if the market's up or down, they still have to get to work." "Recession-proof," Elena said. "Pretty much. I just knew how to rebuild an engine and needed to eat." He offered her the breadbasket first. She took a slice. "How'd you end up running an aerospace company?" he asked. She gave the elevator version. He listened without the impatient nodding most people perform while waiting to speak. When she finished, he said simply, "So you've always been good at building things, just the size got bigger." Ava, who had been following the conversation intently, piped up, "Dad builds things too. He made me a bookshelf from scrap lumber in the shop. It has 8 shelves." She held up 8 fingers for emphasis. Dinner stretched nearly 2 hours. Elena never spoke to Richard Whittaker about the merger clause. She didn't seek out the congressman. She let Ryan manage the room. He was good at it, and stayed at the corner table with the mechanic from Lakeview and his daughter, who wanted to organize stories or fix machines or both. Ava finished her rigatoni and asked 4 questions about how chandeliers are cleaned, 3 about why snowflakes are different, and 1 very precise question about the quartet's second piece. Elena didn't know the composer, but the cellist overheard, knelt down and told Ava it was Bach, Suite Number 1, and jotted the name on a cocktail napkin. Ava folded it carefully and slipped it into her coat pocket. At 9:20, Jack said they needed to leave. Ava had school tomorrow, and the drive back to Lakeview would take 40 minutes in the snow. Ava asked if Elena would visit their school sometime. The question came straight, no hedging. Elena answered the same way. "Yes," she said. Jack studied her for a moment, measuring careful. "You don't have to," he said. "I know." She looked at Ava, who had retrieved the grocery bag and was cradling it again. "I'll have my assistant contact the principal to arrange a time, unless you'd prefer I reach out to you directly." A small shift in his expression. "Principal is Dr. Maria Reyes. She'll know the schedule." They stood. Ava turned back once and said politely, "Thank you for dinner, Ms. Marshall." Then quieter, "The chandelier is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Elena watched them walk to the elevator. Jack's hand rested lightly on Ava's shoulder, guiding her around a cluster of guests. The doors opened. They stepped inside. The doors closed. Ryan appeared at her side. "Whittaker's been patient," he said. "Schedule him for next week. 30 minutes at the office." She handed him her still full champagne flute. "And cancel my 6:30 tomorrow. I'm going to the south side." Chopin Elementary sat on a corner in Bridgeport, a sturdy 4-story brick building that had been repainted beige so many times the color looked tired. A taqueria occupied one adjacent lot, a currency exchange the other. Snow was piled along the sidewalks in neat banks. Elena arrived at 8:20 a.m. She'd instructed Lauren to keep it off the press radar and came in her own SUV with her regular driver, Carlos, who knew how to stay discreet. No cameras, just the school, the arriving kids, and the smell of wet coats and pencil shavings. Dr. Reyes met her at the front entrance. Early 60s, short silver hair, glasses perched on her head. She shook Elena's hand with a straightforward appraisal of someone who'd hosted enough VIPs to sort the photo op visitors from the ones who actually wanted to see. "Ava's class is doing science fair presentations this morning," Dr. Reyes said. "If you'd like to sit in." "I would." The third-grade classroom smelled of glue sticks, dry erase markers, and the warm overcrowding of 23 kids. Pairs of students stood behind trifold boards, volcanoes, life cycles of frogs, the water cycle rendered in crayon and construction paper. Ava's project was on urban wildlife, raccoons, pigeons, rats, how they adapt to cities. Her poster had a nighttime skyline background with glowing eyes drawn in silver marker. She presented without notes, speaking directly to Elena as though they were the only two people in the room who cared about the topic. Raccoons are really smart, Ava said. They remember which houses leave trash out on Tuesdays and which ones use bungee cords. Scientists think they have better memories than dogs, but people call them pests. That's unfair, Elena said. They're just solving problems. Afterward, Elena spent 90 minutes with Dr. Reyes touring the building. The new laptops were everywhere. The library roof no longer leaked. A wall display held thank you notes from students. Elena's name appeared in green marker among 6 others. Simple, permanent, more honest than anything written about her in the journal or cranes. No one had ever put her name on a school wall before. Back at the office by 1:15 p.m., Elena asked Lauren to pull every active education grant in the foundation's portfolio, 47 folders. She read them all that night, 4.5 hours she had never before invested. Lauren's summaries were excellent. Elena still trusted them, but she wanted to see the faces and places behind the bullet points. 3 weeks later, at the foundation's winter board meeting, Elena proposed increasing the education allocation by 150%. Board members who could do the math raised eyebrows and asked why. "We've been writing checks to zip codes," she said. "I want us to invest in schools. They aren't interchangeable." The motion passed. Lauren sent a one-line email. "Thank you." Elena also launched a company-wide community service program, voluntary. 35% of staff signed up in the first 10 days. She admitted privately that she'd underestimated how many people wanted to show up when given the chance. When a Cranes reporter asked about the shift, Elena answered plainly. "What prompted the change?" the reporter pressed. "I was reminded that writing a check and showing up are different. I'd been treating them as the same." The article ran. Most readers focused on the dollar figure. A few noticed reminded and speculated. A mentor, a consultant, a peer. They were wrong. Elena saw no need to correct them. Some truths lose weight when explained. In October, Lauren visited 9 schools and sent Elena a 40-page report with photos. Elena read every page, then asked Lauren to make the visits quarterly and to include her whenever possible. Lauren replied simply, "I'd like that." The invitation for the next Whitaker benefit arrived in February for the following December. Richard asked Elena to co-curate the guest list. She agreed on conditions she could add 2 names. He didn't ask whose. The lakeshore lobby felt warmer this year. Subtle changes, live greenery instead of all cut flowers, softer lighting. Elena had suggested both. She stood near the elevators when the doors opened. Ava stepped out first, always first. She wore a navy dress with tiny white polka dots she'd clearly chosen herself, hair loose with a silver clip holding one side. She carried a small crossbody purse she kept snapping open and shut to test the clasp. Jack followed. Dark suit, perfectly tailored, not flashy, just right. Lapels narrower than last year. Ava's influence, Elena suspected. Ava spotted her instantly, crossed the lobby at a near run, and stopped short. "We rode elevator number 4, she announced. "There are 8 elevators here." "Did you know?" "I didn't," Elena said. "The buttons have numbers on them. Grown-ups never look up." Jack reached them. Their eyes met. Between them lay a year of quiet conversations, phone calls about school events, coffee in the Chopin parking lot after parent nights, longer talks on park benches about work and loss and second chances. Nothing hurried. Slow had been exactly right. "You look good," he said. "You too. Nice suit." Ava picked it, insisted on narrower lapels. Ava, inspecting a potted fern, looked up. "You said I could help choose. I said the jacket should look sharp. You agreed." "It does," Jack confirmed. Richard Whitaker approached, curiosity plain on his face after 2 years of wondering. 2 security officers nearby tried to parse the grouping. Elena turned to face the room. Ava on her left, Jack on her right. The geometry settled itself instantly, the way rooms do when someone in charge makes the alignment clear. A private equity partner Elena recognized from last year glanced at Ava, then at Elena, eyebrows raised. She's with me, Elena said simply. Ava looked up. Last year you said that because security was going to make us leave. Yes, this year is different. Yes, Elena said, this year is different. She offered her arm. Ava took it with solemn responsibility. There's a quartet again, Ava said. I looked up the program. It's Bach. She opened her purse and produced the year-old cocktail napkin, crease soft from handling, unfolded it carefully. Bach Suite number 1 in the cellist's handwriting. I kept it, she said. Elena looked at the napkin, at Ava, at Jack, who watched them both with the same steady warmth she'd first noticed at a corner table on the 52nd floor. Outside the tall windows, snow fell in silence over the city. Inside, the quartet began tuning. The chandeliers scattered light across the room. The Lakeshore Tower had hosted many winters, many deals, many people chasing what they believed mattered. Tonight, it opened to something else. Elena Marshall, who had spent a decade being flawless, walked into the new year with a 9-year-old on her arm and a mechanic at her side. Behind them, the elevator doors closed on the year that had changed everything. Life lesson. Real value in life rarely comes from flawless control, polished appearances, or the next big transaction. It arrives in small, uninvited moments. A child's direct gaze, a handmade gift, a quiet thank you that reminds you helping isn't about optics, it's about presence. The most meaningful shifts happen when we stop measuring worth by distance from our past and start measuring it by how honestly we show up for others and for ourselves. Sometimes the strongest legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in libraries, garages, and the slow courage to let people in. If this story touched you about second chances, quiet gratitude, and choosing connection over perfection, please consider subscribing to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this one. Like the video, leave a comment with what moved you most, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Your support keeps these tales alive. Thank you for being here.